What do you see in this image? Do you know it down to the light bulb model creation date and chemical makeup of the ceiling panels? Or is everything a mystery to you? Does it seem eerily familiar even though you haven't seen it before? Or do you already know what horrors might be lurking behind an off-putting corner in the distance? However much you know, this video will cover every VHS from the Kane Pixels Backrooms series and the most intense theories around to prepare you or give you a recap for the upcoming May 29th Backrooms movie that follows this rendition of the famous Backrooms image. We'll have some theories injected throughout, taking key information from director interviews and fan and YouTuber theories to give us the best scope for when we ourselves step into that cinema screen. Even rules that you can follow if you were to end up in the Backrooms yourself. With these theories becoming more prominent as the video goes on, and I'd also like to throw my own hat into the ring, spitballing some of my ideas. Unlike a lot of other analysis videos, this won't be bulk information. Facts, secrets, hints, and theories and interviews will be portrayed as if you've been watching the series for the first time for full immersion. Of course, I recommend watching the original series, and there's a link to that in the description, but there's a reason why you're here. Chapters to find exactly what you want to know are in the description, but this formatting means that as soon as you're comfortable with the amount of knowledge you have to enter the film, you can stop watching, or keep watching to the end so that you can fully understand and feel the significance of any twists and turns that the movie may hold, that might hit harder with this extra knowledge. On this channel, we've visited some of these real liminal spaces before, including ones that appear in the Backrooms, visiting the real locations where the original liminal photographs were taken. I have filmed the next episode, so subscribe if you want to stick around for that. But now, let's get right into the VHS tapes. The official Kane Pixels Backrooms playlist consists of around 22 videos, almost all being found footage VHS tapes, sometimes mixed with real footage. They're mostly formatted in order of publication, however the narrative is out of order when it comes to events unfolding in the timeline. We'll follow the release order for the intended experience, but map everything out for you on the timeline. The levels or floors of the Backrooms that you might have heard of are in relation to a different take on the original Backrooms image that inspired both series. These levels are not associated with the same narrative of Kane Pixels and thus likely not relevant to the Backrooms theatre release. This is the image and text post that inspired all of the different Backrooms series, including the Kane Pixels series. Although Kane said he wants to draw from the general culture in the cinema release, his timeline and series is what the feature-length film is surrounding, so we can just focus on his series for now. Let's summate the first installation of the series, the first found VHS, in a more detailed step-by-step, as it's the iconic experience that will most people's first look into the Backrooms universe. However, for the other episodes, let's just quickly cover the key lore points, especially those that may be relevant for the upcoming movie. Found footage number 1, September 23rd, 1996. We're introduced to the Backrooms universe through a raw video file of what appears to be a low-budget, likely student film being recorded by some teenagers. The director asks the cameraman to get one more wide-angle shot before wrapping the shoot, but as the cameraman slowly steps backwards,
one more. You got it? Yeah.
he trips. The camera footage gets enveloped in static and corrupt data. The next thing we see is him finding himself in the location of the very image we looked at the start of this video. We follow this found footage from the same camera, a handled perspective of the young man calling out to his missing peers.
Hello?
In an eerie office building with aged wallpaper, dim halogen feeling yellow light, and absurd amounts of open, completely empty space. He turns around to barely catch a glimpse of a figure retreating around the corner of which he came. At least, it's caught on the camera, but the protagonist doesn't seem to notice it. He does, however, spot a relatively thin gap in the wall, a viewpoint to narrowly peer into the depths of another seemingly infinite corridor. The geometry of the gap doesn't line up, as if it was almost a mistake in a procedural generation of a simulation, something that we'll also see in a teaser trailer. He zooms in to see an entranceway at the end of the hall, but how can he get there? After more repetitive exploration, an empty room houses a small 1x1 hole, slightly larger than an air vent, a little over head height, with a thin ladder loosely laid upon the mouth of the tunnel. He scrambles through with increasingly heavy breathing, and compared to the endless similarity, a by this point novel green-tinted light leaks across a room on the other side. Nothing else appears to be different outside of this lighting. Despite the subtle change, he continues to call out for any others that can hear him, to no avail.
Can anybody hear me?
As the exploration progresses, the office walls seem to lose their regularity, holding a less discernible purpose and assuming more abstract structures. Though arrows begin to be presented on the walls, stylistically drawn with some kind of care in what seems like black ink or paint, but it could be any malleable substance. It confirms someone or something with human understanding has definitely been here before. He is not the first visitor, or as some people call them, wanderers. But can he trust these arrows? More drawings and abstract text reveal themselves at the end of the trail. He captures beady, alien-like eyes and a false window with the sun and sea through the glass, and text reading, "Don't move, stay still. God closed his eyes," and "It hears me," scrawled alongside some handprints. It's not revealed where these came from, though most suspect it could be the figure we got a glimpse of earlier. With no time to digest the information, the figure returns alongside an onslaught of distorted horns wailing and bouncing off the uncanny hallways. The wanderer sprints away from the distorted cries, akin to the pained trills of an elephant. As the entity nears, the camera distorts, as do the walls around him. The further he runs, the more he realizes the weighty gravitas of the maze-like, unstructured organization of the Backrooms. Just as the entity nears, he finds another one-by-one tunnel, this time in the form of a trapdoor, and he throws his body down it with no other choice. The environment is immediately different, a more homely feel with what looks like a front door entranceway, next to a familiar stairwell and banister. Up the stairs, he finds a light switch, indicating that there's likely still some kind of functioning infrastructure in this paranormal space. He finds himself in a vast white hallway, with an empty viewing window looking out on a bleak, suffocating courtyard completely inside. This is based on an image of a real hotel that we visited in my last Liminal Spaces video, so be sure to check that out. They're taking forever, but 3 more episodes are coming out this year. It looks like there could be 2 other people on the other side of the atrium, but they look as still as stone. He discovers a few other, more human-looking objects, some industrial signs, waste storage, file storage, but the impossible vastness of what the environment is within negated any semblance of comfort of these familiar sights. Coming to a fire exit door, he still hedges his bets, but upon opening it, the fire escape leads to nothing other than what may as well be his starting location, with the unwantingly familiar hum and suffocating blankets of sickly yellow light. Another entity bounds around a corner, smaller this time, with an extreme velocity, and we also get another look of the spindly original figure that eventually captures and pushes our first wanderer down a chute, sending him hurtling down from the sky towards Earth. So where could these rooms be if he fell from the sky? Could aliens be trying to simulate a human environment in the sky? Was it some kind of afterlife, a purgatory? Was it a government experiment and he was airdropped at a random location afterwards? Or was it simply the effects of a hallucinogenic drug? No matter the truth, we see the wanderer awaken in the grass into which he fell, somehow still alive? Perhaps that was too hopeful. He's almost definitely dead, with his camera still recording. That was the first glance into Kane Pixels' interpretations of the famous Backrooms image. Like I said, these VHS tapes were uploaded out of chronological order. So this is our first frame of reference. This is somewhere in the timeline. Is this early or late, relative to the grand schemes of what we are about to uncover? We won't go into as much detail for the following tapes, however, this is the basis of the universe the film is taking place in. But I'm sure you have some answers that you want cleared up. Where is this place? Does it go on forever? What's its purpose? How or why was it created? And who's behind its creation? Does it feed on people? And how do people end up there to begin with? And can they escape? What do the monsters do when they catch you? How many are there? Do they have strengths and weaknesses? Let's cover the rest of the VHS tapes before theories, interviews, and predictions. The next video published revealed a rough date that this timeline covers, that being around March 11th, 1990. The found tape showcases rooms similar to the ones discovered by our first wanderer, as well as other images that were well in theme with the liminal spaces trend from the last decade. We are shown a circuit board and retrofuturistic stylized technology. Beyond this, narrative webs began to be spun with images of censored scientific workers taking readings or noting down documents on what is peculiarly, seemingly a 1960s or 70s style data entry machine where data is stored on magnetic tape. Does this point towards the Backrooms being a human lab creation, or are humans simply studying the phenomenon? We can at least assume that its existence is partially known by institutions as of June 1991, the month this tape was compiled, over a year after the archive footage was found. We see some more imagery of professionals behind technology, as well as equipment being laid out in the backrooms, resembling server containers or even anti-contamination or fumigation tents. It's still not revealed whether or not this is for setting up this nightmarish environment or trying to solve its elusive existence, though our chances of an optimistic outlook wanes as we see one scientist looking through a viewing window, as if looking out onto test subjects through a one-way glass. Another image details a null zone. Due to the elevation discrepancy between panel 225 and 224, a small KX field is created. Keep in mind the existence of this null zone, as it's something we'll come back to. This gives a glimmer of hope that the scientists could simply be studying this area with a concern for civilians in their hearts. Is a null zone safe? Areas where lifeforms can't access, or are they areas to be wary of? Another tape, dated on the 7th of February 1988, 2 years prior, reveals the intended purpose of the backrooms. 10 years prior to this tape, in July, a research facility called Async tested a low proximity distortion system, or LPDS, in a third attempt to create space itself, for a solution to end the storage, waste, and housing crisis, saving billions of dollars on property construction and management. A couple of months before this, in April, Async held a conference asking for federal funding to fund this venture. As this third test went through, we can assume that the United States government were at least partially involved. And as you could predict by this point, we also see footage of this experiment assumedly going wrong, though this may be revealed later. After all, space was created, and maybe this mass amount of energy was necessary, but the results of course seem far from perfect. Federal control seems to be far from minimal, as a warning flashes in the next installment detailing severe penalties for unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or exhibition of these tapes. This tape, one created by Async, shows at least partial success of their technology, first contact with their generated space, the 6th test of the low proximity distortion system over a year after the last tape, and the 3rd test includes security footage of the main technology, warping the fabric of matter within itself and setting the laboratory facility ablaze in flames. Again, we don't know yet if this energy release was intended. We do hear scientists begging to shut the systems down, as an ever-expanding map of the world being created is detailed on an interface. A scientist proclaims that there is something in there, an obstruction. We see that despite the lack of safety, the backrooms, the generated space, was in fact created despite being unstable. This was likely also another type of first contact, potentially one with the lifeform our wanderer encountered earlier. Another tape in the description of this one details a notable earthquake in North California. Fans originally thought this meant that Async was operating in North California. It could still be the case that the opening of the doorway created a ripple effect that led to the real-world earthquake. We saw one wanderer go missing. Could that be Nicholas Bolton? A missing person detailed in the 5th installation of the Backrooms, alongside Margaret Watson, an unnamed man, a 2-year-old named Ellis White, and seemingly countless others, with unbelievable spikes in disappearances arising after the events of first contact. It's also made clear that scientists did venture into the rooms, with ventilation and protection themselves, discovering a mutilated body of what could be Nicholas Bolton or any other missing person, seeped in a black, organic, bile-like substance described as some kind of fungus. Assumedly, there is a single main person to blame for these haunting events. Could this be Ivan Beck, the director of Async? 2 days later, what we can presume is this corpse, only labelled as John Doe, was analysed by Async. He'd been dead for 5 days, likely from malnutrition, meaning he spent his final moments in agony after being engulfed in a suffocating isolation and panic from finding himself lost within the endless halls. But how did he get there? Portions of his body had been rejecting the decaying process, somehow being preserved, whereas others had been overcome by that same black material, somewhat resembling a mutated strain of simple hay bacillus, a bacteria found in digestive tracts of humans and ruminants. These are usually completely benign, yet scientists recorded
it should be completely benign, but, well, really, I don't know what to make of this.
tape suddenly cuts to television and VHS footage spliced together, this partial part of text. Read over this yourself, but to me this indicates that the Backrooms was deemed dangerous and uninhabitable to humans, and was condemned, yet presumably was forced into fruition by Ivan Beck, the director of Async. We also hear lab workers coughing, indicating that their suits can't fully protect them from this bacteria either. The fact they continue to remain in the complex suggests they know that the bacteria is only harmful with substantial prolonged exposure, or perhaps this bacteria isn't killing people, but growing from their post-mortem remains. Later that same month, a VHS was produced detailing an onboarding video to a project labeled as KV31, which is studying and developing the async low-priority magnetic distortion system that most refer to as the doorway or threshold. We're told never to enter the backrooms alone and to be in a group of 3 as a minimum. But even when doing so, you can become isolated from your peers. In this instance, a worker named Tench hears miscellaneous noises and voices that the others don't seem to be bothered by or can't hear at all.
Guys, can you hear this?
Shortly after,
Hey!
the workers vanished. Or was it him himself that shifted?
George!
He calls their names to no avail,
Open!
lost in the backrooms. Could this zone containing sound that was found by this isolated individual be one of the null zones that we heard about? He does in fact find an area that was previously unknown to us, one that looks like an auditorium housing a collection of clusters of dark, grainy material, probably the hay bacillus. He also encountered a dark, void room and repeated wallpaper detailing trees. Strange wheelbarrow assets lay within, beside a flat image Tudor-era style or Normandy house, all resembling more of a game engine feel compared to the more realistic surroundings we've seen thus far, with the wallpaper texture stretching. Peter eventually finds the door once more, but it's changed slightly with a huge room where that entryway once was. And in that confusion, an alarm sounds. In here, we see a potential origin of one of the original scientist pictures from the March 11th archive tape. We're then shown blueprints of the construction of the room that our worker just found, where the doorway originally was. This means that the worker must have slipped in time, at least by a couple of months, where this development and construction of this room took place. Could these time slips have something to do with these null spaces, or is this what happens when the vibrations and turbulence of this artificial world become unstable, and the technology in place that created it? Some of you may have caught that the date of this tape, February 29th, never actually existed. That year was a leap year, so February 29th could not have existed, making that time leap have a bit more of a contextual fit. The video would have technically been either February 28th or March the 1st. This means there's some unreliability to when these tapes actually took place. Not so long after these events and Peter's disappearance, on March the 5th, 1990, constructions in the backrooms took place, where scientists could set up shop within the new realm. A focus of this activity was to set up 7 modified video cameras optimally positioned along lateral division A of the backroom, what I assume is the first horizontal hallway once stepping through the doorway. These cameras are motion and sound activated in an attempt to monitor and record any activity. This means the lab likely knows about the lifeforms that we do at this point. We also get a glimpse of the maps that are slowly being constructed by Async and the absurd repeated pattern that it manifests as in an aerial view. A series of motion detected alerts were received during the very night of installation. These vary from workers simply passing through the sight lines to the sound of the threshold door closing to completely unknown noises, what could be described as mechanical gasps. But most importantly, at 3:53 AM during the witching hour, some kind of flexible organic lifeform was spotted, peering a potential head and tendril-like digits around a corner, as if knowing that it must stay hidden. In 1982, 8 years before the third test we saw earlier, a prototype test of a technology was conducted, courtesy of Oak Ridge National Laboratory. This is the earliest rendition so far of the threshold door, an attempt at creating this gateway to no avail. As Async ventures out into the Backrooms complex, workers come across a room full of 1x1 pits.
Oh, wow. This is new.
Reminiscent of the ones we've previously seen, tightly and evenly packed together in a grid formation, almost mimicking the negative space of how the start of the backrooms looks from an aerial view. One worker ventures across and sees something surprising, beckoning for the cameraman to come see it as fast as possible.
Oh my god. What are
Everything okay?
Marvin, get the camera over here.
Across?
Fine, just hurry.
But on the way,
Okay, watch it.
Whoa! Ah!
the cameraman falls an immense distance to a lower floor, yet somehow survives, ending up in a green-tinted environment, potentially nearby to the one our first wanderer came across. The fallen worker hears a scream on his level.
What was that?
Even hearing another human scream.
I think there's somebody down here.
And peering under a small gap he finds close to the floor, sees what he describes as streetlights in a nighttime city or suburb setting. To me, this looks incredibly similar to Big City from Gary's mod, a potential inspiration or clue that this realm is a digital simulation. Venturing through the cityscape, he hears echoes of the similar stressed voices and screams bleeding through the walls of the house. This suggests that these null zones could be pockets in time that can hold voices from the past or potentially the future. But inside, an odd collection of street signs clipping into the floor of varying heights. Further into the building, there are signs of someone living in an empty room. A radio is heard, which turns out to be an interview regarding diplomatic relations between USA and Cuba, which is from 2015, further confirming this theory of null zones that act as a slip in time.
Hey!
These can be considered entry points into the backrooms. The threshold door is likely at a null point itself, a man-made one. Further into the house, more backroom halls reach further, directing screams of a man reaching out for any other soul.
Hey! Can you hear me?
But instead of a person, the fallen worker sees another life form similar to our original entity sighting. After fleeing, the fallen worker is eventually pulled to safety, our first living witness of these life forms. That same day, another VHS was produced. The word had spread of this sighting through the facility, with footage repeated over and over to try and get more information. As the workers return to the threshold, we get to put a face to one of the scientists for the first time, Anthony Dawkins, a high-ranking member of Async. We see a few other workers too, studying the footage we witnessed in real time. This real footage is a glimpse at the vision of what Kane Pixels may want to portray in the Backrooms film. After the footage was analysed, the area from which the life form was spotted was crudely boarded up with wooden chipboard. We also see further construction of what is likely the room that Peter Tench returns to after his time slip in the instructional videotape. Some more curiosity of how the null zones function is relieved in the next tape, which is undated, from a CCTV camera on a motorway in the United Kingdom, which catches a moment where an entire car vanishes, clipping through the floor to assumedly end up in the backrooms. This could be considered an entry point to a null zone. Are these entry spots in select locations, or are they at random existing only for a moment before the gateway closes again? After all, cars after this one go over the same spot without any trouble. The series of numbers in this VHS title is the ISBN code for a short story titled The Yellow Wallpaper from 1892. This is a tale of a depressed woman who gets locked inside a room with yellow wallpaper by her husband, subjected to mental torture through isolation. She's eventually driven mad, thinking that there's a woman inside the wall of the room that she's locked in. Upon trying to free the non-existent woman, she ends up with a feeling of liberation herself, as if she's found her true self through freeing this figment of her imagination. This is a hint at Kane's creative process when trying to expand the universe, through researching similar tales and expanding his own knowledge. If you like learning about the creative process this way, check out some of my other videos documenting how independent game designers and directors of horror games and web series integrate similar research into their monsters, stories, and inspirations. So what does the federal involvement think of all of this? International events. They appear to remain fooled by the promises of the presentation Async originally gave. Async likely hid the dark findings from government officials, probably at the will of Async director Ivan Beck. In fact, explicit text flashes on screen implying Async's motive to deceive. During a meeting, potentially with an official however, the illusion could potentially have been broken, as this is the point in time where the lost time slip worker, Peter Tench, reappeared at the threshold gate. And what happened to Peter? The same day as the presentation and meeting, we find out that Peter was completely disoriented upon being found by the alarms between 2 and 3 months after his disappearance. despite, from his perspective, this just being at most a few hours. A worker questions if it really was Peter who was found months later. A newspaper reads, "Fiery wreck beside vineyard leaves one dead." So we can assume that it was a staged death that Async or the government used to dismiss Peter Tench's disappearance. The speaker on the tapped phone call asks,
"Wait, hold on. This isn't him, is it?"
Most of these tapes have just been tidbits of knowledge, and far from the original found footage tape that we originally saw. But it just so happens that the next tape is a similar 13-minute documentation found footage of our second recorded wanderer who is disconnected entirely from Async. A girl films a square of tape with a home video camera in her garage. She documents that when she pours wood chips onto the square or drops a baseball on it, any object instantly disappears.
Look at that! Gone!
Assumedly being transported into the backrooms. Could this mean that some null zones are consistent? When trying to measure how far the objects may be traveling with a tape measure, she feels a force and is pulled down into the backrooms. I wonder if the girl could climb back through the null zone she fell through if she could pile up enough objects to reach that spot. She explores the complex of empty rooms, also finding mundane apparitions of regular human objects and furniture, such as furnishings of a kitchen, strangely manifesting in a corner, with similar environments to what we are familiar with. After losing touch through endless exploration, she eventually discovers more heavily moldy ceilings and walls. This reminds me of the mold in Resident Evil 7, but I might be fixating on that because of the fucking mold in my apartment, which is making me want to kill myself. A crashed car is found, likely the car from installment 12. Other signs of life are once again spotted. A handprint on the wall, made with that unknown black substance, and blood is spotted on the floor. As more mold or bacteria becomes increasingly abundant, she finds plant-like, fungus-like growths in a room, clinging to the walls and ceiling like roots from a tree, slowly spreading like a mycelium network. And Wendigoon actually had a fun fact about this room, that this entire house area was modeled off Kane Parsons' own childhood home, with the moldy room being his bedroom.
This is the house you grew up in?
Yeah.
Was that your bedroom over here, the infected one?
Yeah, this is how it looked.
Well, I mean, is this like in the blueprint? Is this actually the room you grew up in?
This is me.
That's you over in the corner.
In any case, those growths start moving, and a detached part with limbs and a head starts moving towards the girl. One very similar to the one from the first found footage with our first wanderer. This is likely what the car crash victim turned into, after wasting away and being overtaken by the mold in the complex. This fan theory says the entity isn't just making scary monster sounds, it's yelling no and crying out in agony. God knows what kind of suffering the car driver, the autopsy subject, and all the other victims endured in their final moments. She climbs down a hole to escape, and through extremely tight corridors to hide. A searing green energy fills the room she's in, as if a blinding radiation tears through the fabric of the realm. The girl's footage ends there. Artwork on the wall is present, which is from the cover of Woman's Home Companion, published in September 1916, created by artist George Brown. What could Kane have been trying to infer with this inclusion? Was it that this was just in his own childhood home, as it was quite a common art piece to have? Could it be supporting the theory that the Backrooms environment is constructed of fragmented echoes of human memories? Because this magazine cover represents a familiar and nostalgic home element that could have been distorted into this nightmare. The next tape, Home 27647.mov, which is undated, carries that sentiment of the home, and in which we see the painting from found footage 2 in the background of a real picture, hinting at whose memories or what environment the backrooms were generated from. Did someone's sentience get harnessed in the creation of this new realm? The pictures that appear are likely in fact genuine pictures of Kane's real family, as it's the same apartment in the background that we see in found footage 2, which like we said is based on his childhood home. Perhaps the backrooms isn't creating brand new space. Instead, it could be duplicated, tearing and mimicking certain areas, expanding them like a sponge. It's more space, but with the same parts in a new location. One fan theory suggests, so the bacteria is taking the last memories of its victims and replicating them in the backrooms. This footage was of the person in the car that was transported into the backrooms and crashed against the wall. Its driver was probably one of the 3 people in the last picture. But not everyone thinks this is completely cohesive. We see a flash of an ancient map of the solar system too, one where the belief that the Earth is the center of the solar system rather than the sun. Is this a truth in this universe that Async could know about? With the bleak fate of both of the currently known wanderers, it's insanely lucky that the worker who slipped in time, Peter Tench, made it back to the threshold. This tape from the 25th of May, 20 days after he'd returned to the facility, starts with no acknowledgement of this event. Another fun fact is that this long-haired actor is apparently Kane Pixels' father. We see another company that is potentially involved. A mug has a Mossland Marine Labs logo with coordinates directing to the address of that lab in Northwest California. We then see Async carrying on work, despite this being after Peter's return. A lab vehicle with cargo navigates the Backrooms. They take a look at the area that was barricaded due to the monster chase events in the Pitfalls tape and Peter's experience. They send a rover out to explore the dangerous areas for them, eventually reaching room 14D, the pit room. The room across the pits is what has the mysteriously interesting contents that were spotted by the other lab member in Pitfalls. More lab members progress in person to the location of the rover. They construct bridges across the pits to safely navigate to the other side, this time with weaponry. They spot a small gap between different room types without a clue how far the drop may be between them, and come across a hand-drawn map using the black mold, possibly from a previous wanderer.
Well, if we do get back in the same system, non-issue, you just come back around to see what...
A man dressed in black tackles a lab worker. He tells everyone not to move, and that he doesn't want to hurt anyone, but he will.
Yes, it's me. Is it really you?
It's me. It's me.
How? It's been months. We thought you...
I know.
It's Peter. He explains how everyone thinks he's dead, but why is he back in the complex despite finding his way back to the threshold more than half a month ago? And the workers, well, they report Peter as a hostile. So in retaliation...
This is Mark, I read you.
Mark, don't.
What are you doing?
We need immediate arms
Mark.
support at room 14C. My team and I are being held at gunpoint by a hostile. I repeat,
Stop.
please
Don't
send
shoot him.
immediate arms support to room
Stop.
14C.
Don't.
Sorry.
Peter shoots at one of them. In the next playlist tape, documented as a day later, the other team, Team A, hears Peter's gunshot. We see Peter fleeing the scene and entering the newly built room by the threshold doorway, and goes on to begin entering Async laboratory, leaving the Backrooms. Security chases after him, and Async holds workers overnight before disclosing what truly, with heavy quotes, happened the morning after. The alleged timeline of events being, on the morning of March 1st, 1990, a team of 4 researchers was sent into the complex to conduct a routine layout analysis. At 12:25 PM, the team realized that they'd lost track of Peter. As such, the team immediately withdrew from the Backrooms. Async searched for Peter for several days, though they eventually assumed that he'd vanished with no further trace. They felt that this couldn't be revealed to the public, so after 2 weeks, the security team put together a more acceptable cause of death that would draw attention away from the Institute and provide closure for the family. On May the 8th, at approximately 5:30 PM, a motion alert was sent out of the complex. This is the place we saw Peter return to at the threshold. A senior engineer was sent down to assess the situation, and Async could identify the person as Peter Tench. Tench was moved to a secure room where doctors tested him to try and discover what effects he had endured over the 2 months that he was missing, but he appeared to be in excellent health. From his perspective, his camera documented the entire ordeal, documenting his time slip. Because he had been legally declared dead, it would take a long time to undo this, so Peter was stuck down in the lab for an extremely long time, over 2 weeks of almost complete isolation, after his isolation in the Backrooms. And as you can expect, his mental health began to reveal cracks in his sanity, behaviors commonly diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. They didn't diagnose him with this, but there were similarities. He thought that he was still inside some kind of illusion. Understandably. On the 22nd of May, he was ready to be transferred to a residence above ground. But Peter broke away from Async and made his way back into the threshold into the Backrooms, likely in an attempt to return to what he thought was his original world. He believed that the Async workers were trying to trap him. After he stole the gun off the workers from Backroom's reunion, he ran through Async labs, eventually taking a freight lift to the surface. He was not noticed as he exited the property, but cameras observed him navigate across the hills on the laboratory property. Peter Tench was then allegedly, according to Async, found deceased halfway down the hillside with an extreme blow to the head. They said, "It appears that while he was running through some brush, he failed to anticipate a sudden dip in the ground and tragically fell forward into a large rock." Do you believe this outcome? Or do you think that the lab intervened for their own best interest? Async assures that despite the tragedy, the work they're doing is bigger than any one person, and to stay committed to the project. Despite this, flashes on the tape show what could be an individual in public. Could this be Peter, who actually escaped? We also see that a phone rings on the surface. No one answers. Could this be a call coming from within the backrooms, or someone calling the inside? Or is this a call from Peter asking for help from loved ones? Maybe he made a call from this public phone and someone is calling back, only for him to be gone again. But why would Async lie about this? Why would they want to keep Peter alive or hide that he's in public? Do they want to keep him alive and to study him further? In addition, while they're revealing these details, a syringe is shown. Could this suggest that he didn't go crazy on his own and that they were sedating him? And is that part of what led to his understandable mistrust? During his so-called insanity, we see him writing and drawing about the sea in sailboats. If the wind is right, you can sail away. Again, the sea imagery is something we're going to come back to later in the theory section, as it will just really delay what we're looking at right now. These more recent tapes are incredible to witness, as they feel like they're the most up-to-date and the main substance of an unfolding narrative, feeling like they're happening in as close to sequential real time as possible in these types of series. On the contrary, in the next VHS, Overflow, it's revealed that the start of these experiments is 1972. The very beginning of our timeline so far. We see an overload alert being activated, presumably the instability of the Backrooms realm, potentially during its actual real creation. There's a map titled Invisible Networks, with lines that seem most concentrated around Texas. Could this be the origin of where everything started? Is this where the Backrooms is disrupting the most space? Are these tunnels correlations with null zones? People speculate these are oil and gas pipelines. People also suggest that architecture on the board seems to be on trend with areas in the general or perhaps South Midwest region of America. We of course see Ivan Beck's signature from the 2nd of August 1972 and a series of sevens. A quadruple 7 has ties to the knowing and understanding of life and spiritual form in spirit or angel numbers. We then see an increasing green light. Did Ivan Beck have access to the Backroom somehow before the Threshold machine? Was this a crude first attempt on his part, or is whatever this green energy is manifesting in the Backroom similarly to other objects and elements? Are certain manifestations being drawn from Ivan Beck's very consciousness? The sky folds in on itself. Universes could be being duplicated and merged over the top of one another. There's a ripple in something cosmic. The center of the universe, maybe as Earth as the center, could have a rotational pivot in another incomprehensible dimension during the creation of the Backrooms. We remain in a period before the disappearance of Peter Tench in the next VHS 2, which is from the 14th of November 1989, a few months before Peter returns to the facility after his time slip. A lab worker documents the progress of the new threshold room that connects to the doorway. Lots of workers can be seen carrying out tasks in the backrooms, seemingly relaxed and comfortable. Tiles from the ceiling are taken down and the camera is poked above the ceiling board. They see no insulation on top and a regular empty space and ventilation system. No rust or any kind of wear. They attempt to cut power to specific lights, but they remained on even after removing power supplies. The ceiling tiles measure 1.27 meters by 1.14 meters, which is certainly not standard, and not even square. Could these dimensions have been measured through the perspective of a photo or memory? They're also larger than standard ceiling tiles that we're used to. Now for some boring stuff. Skip to the timestamp on screen if you don't want to know about the composition of what this area of the backrooms is, because that's what we're going to do. The material makeup of the tile seems standard, around 60% mineral wool, silicon fibers normally derived from basalt, 20% perlite, mainly derivatives of silicon and aluminium, as well as latex polymers, starch, and organic recycled plant material. The lights appear regular and standard with common properties and electrical outlets, emitting a 120 Hz hum, one recognized as an organic ambience synonymous with being in the backrooms, and familiar like the yellow fluorescent glow and smell of damp carpet. They speculate that this hum could get louder over time as the insulating material around the light degrades. And despite the real origin of the backroom's original image that we know now, workers speculate that the large proportion suggests that it was built for a non-standard space, not something that you would find in a majority of offices or commercial spaces. Bottom line is, all material compositions seem as what you might expect with early testing, congruent with any other environments in our standard regular spaces. Various markings of electrical and manufacturing details can be found on electrical systems even holding serial numbers. The lighting ballasts were manufactured in 1973 in Reading, Pennsylvania. The bulbs were manufactured by Sylvania with a soft white color code made in the USA without a manufacture date. The autonomous power source remains unidentified, so we don't know how anything is powered in the backrooms. This next tape will give us some more close-up first-hand contact though, as it's the longest final found footage tape that we see, documenting another wanderer's experience. This is honestly, in my opinion, the best video in the series, so I'm going to go into a bit of extra detail for this one. But of course, feel free to skip ahead to the theories and trailer analysis and interviews and everything like that afterwards if you want to. The tape contains a very distorted home video vlog of some days out. A man explains a plight at his work seemingly tied to law, fraud, or settlements. Perhaps he's a journalist as he's taking notes of the wrongdoings of an executive of a company. Some believe this company to be Monsanto, which appears to be the first company to produce visible LEDs, therefore also believing that it's likely that these are the LEDs in the backrooms, somehow linking Monsanto to the creation of the backrooms also. A car radio playing in one clip describes the Oklahoma City bombing, indicating that this tape is likely from sometime around April 19th, 1995, or sometime after. The camera owner, Robbie, calls someone, likely his landlord, to ask if any maintenance is planned for that day, to check the downstairs of presumably his apartment, as he's heard noises, but they say that nothing was planned. He opens the downstairs door and calls out to see if anyone's there.
Hey!
He finds a broken window down the stairs looking out into a garden. He hears noises coming from within a cupboard on the other side of the room. He flicks a light switch on and off and opens a cupboard where sounds might be coming from, revealing a dull, dark closet space, homing a single chair eerily sitting in the corner and a mysterious pipe crawling up the wall. To his right, the closet expands into a larger space, with a black void of darkness filling the room, clouding the perception of its size. Turning away, he explores the rest of the apartment. Another doorway revealed a shockingly large, expansive, dreary room with no lighting. A damp tone and tattered litter scattered around the room, with no sign of organization. More rooms and doorways of the basement extend out with clutter laying around. Rolls, weights, boxes, and bikes. Venturing forwards, he notices a broken wall to reveal even more passageways, in a seemingly constant expanding space in what was once a small downstairs apartment, or section of his apartment. Cheap wood and chipboard paneling lays above his head, and musty stone tiles age beneath his feet. He turns around to the crackle of failing lights in the basement behind him, and in that moment he screams and falls down a passageway, sliding through a cupboard, being caught in an office conference room. He attempts to clamber up the slanted cupboard slide to no avail. Scrambling through the office for answers, he comes across a doorway labeled stairs. At this point, he doesn't even think he's being transported anywhere. He believes this is all under the property. Lights start to turn on without his influence, so something is controlling the electricity and power. He finds a small 1x1 hole similar to an air vent and a tunnel from the first found footage tape, revealing a small hideaway room, a room almost resembling a family living room, and a circle of stackable chairs with an incredibly high ceiling, skylight, and balconies. One of the most true representations of the liminal spaces phenomena, in my opinion. We get a glimpse of the iconic backroom through a gap in the wall, solidifying the surreal, interconnected network of these spaces, with hallways even being hidden behind objects. He himself recognizes familiar objects, such as a childhood road playmat that is a well-known shared nostalgic memory across the globe. There's a strange balance of it seeming like humans have never been here, and that humans have just left, even if you'd never encounter another soul there. But a loud noise is heard. Oh my god. He calls out but gets no response aside from a light turning off.
I'm trying to leave. I don't want any trouble.
But during his futile attempts to discover an exit, a closed door behind him knocks before whatever made that noise attempts to break the door down.
Hey.
He eventually understands just how vast the scope of what he's dealing with is as he gazes over red light bouncing off the infinite expanse of city-like structures. There are definite signs of other life as we hear wails echoing throughout the halls. The black, moldy bacteria substances get more apparent as he ventures further. Even music, or at least digital sounds, are being played in certain areas, giving the same strange feeling as exhibitions at museums or art galleries where avant-garde or mixed media artists try to persuade viewers with their visions. Aside from the writing on the walls and manufacturing stamps, we see one of the first instances of text plainly laid out on a designed leaflet, somehow from 2022, in Chinese. Although in Chinese, this original mini poster was actually still from California, just designed for Chinese speakers in the local area.
Okay.
He appears comforted to find some working technology, what he deems as a sign of real humanity, or a possibility of a connection to where he desperately wants to return to, any place with a sense of normalcy outside of this maze.
Radio check. Does anyone copy?
He attempts to use the radio to call out for any receiving listeners, eventually getting some muffled feedback as a possible response.
Hello, hello. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hello, hello.
Hunting down the voices on faraway speakers, he hears an intercom radio scaring him. He turns around to flee and encounters a human-like figure in a suit that charges towards him. It doesn't move in a human manner though. It starts crouched down on all fours, then, upon running, does so with a bent over posture. An abnormally low pelvis and low hanging knees, running with the impossibility of a floating figure of animation in a dream. Perhaps this was another wanderer who'd been trapped there for God knows how long, or perhaps this environment can generate replicas of people too, as like the familiar household objects and furnishings. It cries out in painful gasps before being barricaded on the other side of a narrow tunnel by a sofa Ravi can just about move into place in time. This is the third and likely final life form we see in the series, that people refer to as still life. The figures we see in the first found footage tape in the hotel area are also still. Could this also be still life? In fact, we do now know the true origin of those figures in the window. In fact, the person who took that liminal space photo spoke about his experience in the real place too, in my Discord and in the comment section of the video where I visited it. These shadow figures are in reality reflections of the photographer. In any case, these three life forms are commonly identified as the only three, such as in the most recent Wendigoon Backrooms video, at least the ones we know of. I believe these could in fact be three stages of a life cycle of the same species. The bacteria could infect or take over a dead body, and then it could be reconstructed into a new body as a vessel, potentially not even having the limbs in the same places as a regular human, like we see in the still life and final life forms, before becoming unrecognizable as a life form we originally see in found footage 1 and found footage 2. Could the massive tagulation of rooted bacteria growth be a nesting point for these life forms, or is this part of the process of taking over the body to use as a vessel? Wendigoon did end up having a very similar theory to this as I continued to watch this video. I believe something at least similar to one of these theories is probable. It's probably the first example of a life form in this strange universe, as all new recorded life as we know it starts as bacteria. Ravi briefly documents a hairy spider-like limb slowly emerging from under a doorway. Is this a potential fourth life form, or is it just a piece of dust that Ravi is fixating on or notices? Or have I just completely misinterpreted this? His endless journey trudges on as the glowing resonance of a giant fan grows louder, leading him to what appears to be a window looking onto the outdoors. possibly even the surface. But the city buildings that overlap one another before him could be entirely enveloped inside of this never-ending, peculiar hellscape. This is surely something to push the boundaries of anyone's sanity and tenacity. With waves of motivation still managing to occasionally edge their way far into his psyche, he continues on with hope of finding another soul again. But is that a naive wish to ask for, when the closest thing we can see is a cardboard cutout of a caveman, likely one that was used for a display in a cinema? Footprints made of the moldy black substance trails through an apartment kitchen, dissipating into a single boot that sinks into the floor. A calm and collected explanation of a man with an authentic tone finds its way down the stairs of an apartment. Another speaker? Is it a lure to one of the more dangerous beings? He locates the source of the sound coming from a closet, and he calls hello towards the voice in that direction.
Hello?
Someone out there?
The voice yells back, asking if someone is out there. Is this another null zone and a way for Ravi to communicate with the surface? Ravi tries to explain that he's lost, but the man firmly states that he's on private property and needs to leave. Ravi explains that he's trying to leave and isn't trying to cause any trouble. They can't see each other. The man says he's looking outside but can't see anything. This is likely the first communication of a null zone that we know of.
What the fuck? What? Oh my god.
The man on the other side eventually tries to break down the wall to free Ravi, but ends up falling into the null zone himself and not ending up next to Ravi. This means that null zones do not line up with sound or time in the same way that matter does. And what happens if someone falls through a null zone but doesn't land in the backrooms? Will they just continue to fall forever? We then see Ravi in a red lit room. His hope is running dry. Some speculate he has drunk some alcohol that has been littered around the backrooms. He's losing energy and is on a surefire path to starvation, like we've seen with the other victims found by Async. He rambles about previous memories, one of being in a park, reminiscing of the clarity of people's faces at home. He apologizes for his actions that bring him guilt. Some fans speculate that the objects in the backrooms have ties to the original owners, and that's what can create the null zones. The welcome mat in this room is mirrored, as well as road signs that we've seen before. The wallman mentions that they've been doing some new wainscoting, and there's an unfinished wainscoting in the interior wall in the backrooms. When we see visuals of the sky warping over itself, is this creating the backrooms as some kind of reflection? We also see potential manifestations of Ravi's memories in the backrooms. He talks about fraud at an office job. His first place in the backrooms is an office. He sees a drum kit similar to the ones in the property that he visits at the start, and also encounters parks, an area he discusses as his final documented words. Could these have ties to the physical space? Or is this included to indicate the similarities of human experiences? And how often our core memories overlap with others? These are all theories that we will explore later in the video. Make note of the person or statue fused as part of the rooms. Wendigoon thinks that this could be people being fused as energy, or what happens when people no-clip into the wrong positions. But real quickly for this specific tape, here are some fan theories. Forgive me if I'm stupid, I think this video shows the aftermath of people attempting to live in the backrooms. We see areas in previous videos built upon, with entire skyscrapers built in the small neighborhood area. There are a lot more items here, way too many to just be no-clipped. I believe the portal Ravi steps through was created as Async opened more gates, destabilizing the world and letting more into, but letting none leave. We see this when he tries to climb out, when he first falls that the exit had already been blocked off. There's also a time theory which the Backrooms Found Footage 3 really opened up. The theory goes as follows. Ravi is/was in a place in the backrooms where time is extremely distorted. I think that he caused the guy at the house to clip into the backrooms, but started himself at the aftermath of that event. When he arrives at the house, it's clear that something has happened earlier there. We see a shoe or maybe even a foot in the ground, and we see blood. It's obvious that maybe someone clipped in there earlier. My theory is that the guy that Ravi speaks to clipped in and then had his foot or shoe stuck in that apartment. Eventually, he wandered around the area for a long time, died, got infected by the bacteria, and became the entity that Ravi encounters. It could be possible that there are even maybe days in between these events, and that the man talking to the dad's kids could have been a trapped wanderer or a still life trying to communicate. 4 days after Peter Tench escaped from Async, 2 men argue on the phone about siding with the company or not, regarding the alleged death of Peter Tench, and the lack of responsibility of keeping the Backrooms and Threshold open despite their instability. The call is between Marvin and George, Async workers, which now may have merged to become part of the Department of Energy. It looks like the Threshold may have been turned off at this point in time. But we do also get a sudden cut to more Backrooms VHS content. We see room 14D, the pit room, with a still unknown room across the other side, despite even more organized bridging structures across the pit. We finally see into the other room. But despite the workers' surprised initial reaction, it appears fairly standard, relative to what we've already seen already. There is, however, a warped texture of the wall, like the surface of the walls being completely stretched, similar to the wallpaper's defects we saw in Pitfalls, but this time it's just the base yellowish wallpaper patterns. In the initial reaction, we saw the same green glowing energy that still has an unknown explanation. Could this energy be what is distorting these walls? Is the energy creation of more space, continuously stretching the complex and making it larger exponentially? Maybe the worker who saw the green energy was actively seeing the environment shift and distort before his eyes. They see more irregularities of objects half clipping into walls and the floor. Nothing too irregular compared to the uncanny rooms we've seen various wanderers witness, but imagine how surreal this would be to witness for the lab workers for the first time. This next final VHS tape is where this part of the video will begin to pivot into theories, interviews, and predictions for the rest of the movie. This tape, I remember, is not included in the official Backrooms playlist and does not have a date. Wind chimes are what opens this video, suggesting that the monologue it contains is delivered from Ivan Beck, as wind chimes also appear in Overflow, where Ivan's first experiment likely took place, and the wind chimes can also be heard upon found footage 2 being watched on a television, which fans assume Ivan Beck is watching after the tape was found. So what was he saying in his monologue full of metaphors in this tape? There are a lot of fan theories that allude to Ivan dealing with amnesia, often tying into information picked up in the soundtrack, artwork, and titles, which could be a whole video in itself, to be honest. Some think that due to his fascination with his lost memories, he's trying to find them within the complex, suggesting there is a true tie to memories in the Backrooms. Potentially, the creation of the Backrooms stole a piece of his own memory in the initial experiment, and he's trying to fight to get a part of himself back. The main metaphor to look out for when watching the movie is one of the sea. Most people taking the sea imagery to mean that the Backrooms is almost a direct comparison of the sea. The sea was something that for most of human history was shrouded in mystery and was thought to go on forever until it was conquered. Even to this day, we've not explored the depths of the ocean in any truly meaningfully completionist capacity. This curious discovery mindset is the same with space before the moon landing. Ivan likely has a desire to conquer this unknown. Maybe he has to conquer it, or thinks he has to, in order to find his missing self. But how can he justify this being worth the sacrifice of others and the very fabric of the world? Or does he have to find these missing pieces to fully stabilize the threshold as it stands, and it's a utilitarian necessity for human survival? Maybe the world will crumble unless he solves this problem. Kane has stated that the British conspiracy series Utopia is one of his favourite television series, with very similar dystopian tones in this regard as the Backrooms. Spoiler alert, but in it, a company's aim is to manage an overwhelmingly large population by genetically modifying humans so that fertility caps at 1 in 20 people able to have children. When a worker for this organization is interrogated, he says that he has many crimes on his conscience.
There are 1,000 other crimes on my conscience.
But they are all in the name of the greater good.
But you know what I see, Wilson? A planet turned into a desert.
A necessary evil.
1,000 million souls starving, dying, and we can stop this.
Perhaps Kane enjoys the concept of utilitarian moral greyness. Almost all villains think that they're doing the right thing. In Utopia, they think it's the only way for humans to survive and avoid horrid wars for survival, yet are seemingly still convinced even though aging populations host similarly devastating outcomes.
It sterilizes people, do you know that? You just want to make money from it.
Just make money? Did you say just make money? If they do this, it's social and economic Armageddon. What do you think it'll be like getting old if there are no young people to pay for it? Do you think there'll be pension plans, healthcare, free fucking bus passes? In the future, if you're old, you're dead unless you have wealth.
So instead of stopping it, you just want to make money?
stop it. Why should I want to stop it? They're right, of course they're right.
Even the complete collapse of infrastructure and collapse for care of old people, aside from the super wealthy, is worth it in their view for ensuring long-term ecological survival, no matter if it means innocent deaths.
Good people.
Good. Why? Because you know them. We're saving a species. Are these few more important than everyone because you've become attached to them? We can't afford attachments.
And even if they were right about this and it was airtight, why would the democratic population not be able to have democratic input themselves? This same question is surely something that will be tackled in at least the rest of the Backroom series. Maybe not the film though. This is something I think a lot of fans want answers to. Does Ivan Beck really think this infinite storage space is a necessity, or is it his ego caught up in trying to conquer? In Utopia 2, the creator of the vaccine that would lead to people's mass infertility genuinely thinks he's doing the correct thing and pitches this idea for funding. A pretty similar parallel to Async. In fact, one episode follows the creator's twisted logic in this endeavor.
Now, I believe I've isolated a group of people who are genetically stronger.
Group? Do you mean a race?
Race is not a term that science recognizes, but yes, if you must, then race.
That's the Third fucking Reich.
It's the opposite of that. I'm not talking about murder, I'm talking about allowing some to continue. A world without race. It's a world without racial fucking genocide!
One last similarity, which I just thought was cool, even if it is a coincidence, is that one of the first things to be mentioned as a result of overpopulation in Utopia was dealing with mass waste.
The continued waste collector strike has led local authorities to store waste in car parks.
One of the exact problems that Async suggested to solve with the discovery of the Backrooms. Across the timeline, we see more and more objects in the complex, however appeared pretty empty at its first glances. Was it actually as such? Just Ivan's perceptions until others also had their memories leak into the void alongside his? This whole intricate web that makes up Ivan will likely be hinted at in the movie, but I wouldn't hold your breath for any kind of major resolution or explanation, considering Kane did say that he wants this film to be able to be viewed by first-time viewers and not have to have you know every single thing about the series. We see splitting and bending of various landscapes and indoor settings in a much higher abundance than previously, alongside a lab worker reacting to ever-brightening green glows of energy. This rotating distortion must represent the creation of the complex space, in my opinion, and likely has something to do with the organization of the universe. If the Earth is truly the center of the universe in this instance, as lightly suggested, rotating the pivot point of such further would create more space. But after 360 degrees, this starts to overlap, leading to null spaces and doorways, duplicated or mirrored realms, and an unstable world. And what could the pivot point be external to the Earth? Well, it could be the sun. There's so much sun imagery in the VHS tapes, of the real sun as well as some imagery of an Earth-centric solar system, and also posters of the sun iconography of heraldry, or a Splendour as you may have heard Wendigoon call it. He also caught onto the fact that the first time humans interacted with the Backrooms, August 4th, 1972, the date of Overflow, was also the exact same date of one of the biggest recorded solar storms in history, which disrupts electromagnetic fields, something that the Threshold technology utilizes. There were also solar flares in real life at the date of the third test, so how could Ivan Beck have been harnessing the sun? The only far-reach possible explanation I could find is the Alchemy depiction of a green lion devouring the sun. If the sun is the thing that is drawing the pivot of the universe, causing it to expand, this of course draws parallels to the green glows that allows rooms in the complex to change shape and increase in size and expand. But if this green light is meant to line up with this famous green lion imagery, what does the green lion represent? Firstly, we should understand that in Alchemy there are 3 stages of the sun. The black sun is the first stage out of black, white and red, corresponding to the 3 most used alchemical color stages, with the end result of a magnum opus. Marsilio Ficino, an Italian scholar and priest, writes, "The black stage involves dissolving the body through its own heat and humidity, where the soul, the middle nature, holds the principality in the color of blackness all in the glass." Although this is cryptic, it of course brings forward the imagery of the black mold decaying bodies after extreme isolation and starvation, though the black mold could represent the darkness of the Backrooms itself, symbolically and literally being in a void detached from the surface world. Incredibly, the third stage of this alchemy to find the magnum opus, the Philosopher's Stone, is the Red Sun, symbolizing rebirth and perfection. At the end of Found Footage 3, we see Ravi covered in a blanket of red light as, although he's lost all hope of survival, clearly recording his final message to the world, he recalls kind memories and radiates a sort of acceptance and peace, even if shrouded in dread. Jung's interpretation of these stages in alchemy is that once a person confronts their inner darkness, the black sun, and cleanses their ego, they achieve a state of wholeness that cannot be easily broken by external crises. This is of course very far-fetched, and I'm not trying to say otherwise, as we did not see Ravi undergo any of the previous sun stages, but there's a slim chance that this is a nod that alchemy was involved in the creation of the Backrooms, potentially involving the black bacteria. A book called The Black Sun, which has the same cover as Kane Pixels' profile picture on his second channel, quote, re-examines the paradoxical image of the black sun and the meaning of darkness in Western culture. In the image of the black sun, Marlon, the author, finds the hint of darkness that shines. He draws upon his clinical experiences and on a wide range of literature and art to explore the influence of light and shadow on the fundamental structures of modern thought, as well as the contemporary practice of analysis, an important contribution to the understanding of alchemical psychology. This book draws a postmodern sensibility to offer insight into modernity, the active imagination, and the work of analysis in understanding depression, trauma, and transformation of the soul. Although Kane has said he did not have a traumatic childhood, this could line up with further themes of windows looking inward and a way to dismantle inner darkness within yourself to move towards reaching your potential, to maybe create your own magnum opus. That might seem a bit like word salad, but for me, finding out a book exists that covers the phenomenon of exploring inner darkness to fix something in psychology ties in perfectly well to the kind of green-lightenment themes and alchemy we were talking about earlier. So the fact that book is Kane's profile picture on his second channel seems pretty promising, and I'm really excited to see what kind of profound themes are in this movie. I also completely missed a major part of this alchemy process whilst researching. Apparently these are the top 3 stages, and there's a 4th major stage, the yellow stage. It goes without saying this is partially involved with the yellow lighting and the wallpaper of the Backrooms, but what does this yellow mean in alchemy? Citrinatus is the 3rd major phase in the magnum opus, or the great work. It represents the awakening of inner wisdom, the dawn of the solar light within the soul, and the ripening of materials towards ultimate spiritual perfection. So this really does all seem to be tying together. Not only is The Threshold and Backrooms probably Ivan Beck's magnum opus in his eyes, but maybe he thinks that it's enlightening all those that fall into it. I mean, that seems pretty delusional if he does think that, but I don't know, it's giving me more and more questions even though it feels like we're solving something. Seeing as we don't see much white in the Backrooms, I'm not sure what the exact alchemical cycle Kane is trying to reference that includes yellow, red, green, and black, and I've run out of time to read the entirety of the book The Black Sun before this video needs to be posted. All I know personally is that in the Jungian psychology Kane is likely referencing, details occur in a circular process or loop, and that in enlightenment or the creation of a magnum opus, parts often need to be broken down to come back stronger, and Kane seems to have some kind of fixation or significant placed on the black sun, where the ego is often broken down, but also there are general themes of disillusion, depression, confrontation with shadow, and descent into chaos. I think we can also assume that this is what the therapist uses as some of her techniques with her window looking inwards ideas. But again, let's come back to the green line. In practical laboratory alchemy, the green line represents sulfuric acid, a highly corrosive mixture with the utility of dissolving materials into a liquid state, such as solid gold. So something is broken down to create something better. A spiritual interpretation of this is that if the Backrooms content is being generated by memories of humans, the reason they appear distorted, empty, and without soul or personality could be that in the process of creation, with the green energy, it could be purifying people's memories and removing all ego from those memories, which could be why there's a physical environment but doesn't seem to have any humanity or soul. No warmth. In addition, if the geocentrism theory is true in this universe, making Earth the center of the universe, it would make sense as to why people falling through null zones end up in different times and places, as the Earth is no longer rotating around the sun over time, but pivoting in the same spot on its own axis. People going through null zones would share the same space as Earth, as it's in the same location, just at different rotations in time. If the sun were to be at the center, people might just no-clip right into space, as Earth would not be in the same position. This is of course grasping at straws, and it's hard to make logic with something so fantastical. But it's interesting to think about when you consider that the potential life cycle of the bacterium, going from consuming the dead to the creation of a new body and to a new being, potentially seen as perfect, to the bacterium draws another parallel where a human's ego is removed for a more perfect and pure life form, or how Async's endeavors of breaking the laws laws of physics and stopping at nothing, not even disrupting multiple lives or hiding deaths, mirrors the pursuit of traditional alchemists seeking the elixir of life or other impossibilities. A soundtrack cover art called A Life of Entropy Part 1 also has the cover of an image called the Flammarion engraving, depicting a pilgrim reaching the end of the flat earth, where it meets the firmament, a celestial barrier that separates the heavenly waters from the earth. This could be interpreted as going from the realm of our sun, representing divine radiance, life and vitality, or our service and conscious mind, into the moon and Loma realm, representing the feminine, cold and unconscious mind. This could signify that the complex could be utilizing the collective unconscious or collective memory as a physical space. Although alchemy seems like it plays a prominent spot, it's hard to know exactly what Kane is getting at, though the breakdown into something pure and the pursuit of the impossible seems like themes that do line up with what we've experienced. As you can tell, this last VHS already led straight into theories, so let's get right into theories about the whole universe and what may appear in the movie before we get into more of the fine details that can be speculated on from the movie trailers and interviews with Kane Parsons and other cast members. Wendigoon is obviously one of the most prominent horror commentary creators on YouTube and is synonymous with the Backrooms at this point, with many interviews with Kane and also being able to visit the Backrooms movie set. In any case, the main things that I took from his most recent video that could be applied to the movie is that everything we see would exist in a post-1970 reality, as that was when the threshold first opened. And I mean, we can see that at least Async is monitoring Clark at this time period as well, even if maybe for him, he is a different reality. Or potentially his null zone is one that isn't shifting in time but just location. Wendigoon also found out that there are these secret drawings in the Garry's Mod maps that are confirmed to be fairly lore accurate by Kane. And with this drawing in particular, Kane said that if you were to look back at this drawing after some time, after new episodes or maybe even the film has come out, it's something that you could make sense of and things would very much click. I really tried long and hard to look at this, but maybe it only becomes apparent after the fact, but this is something that any theorist could dig into, but I could not pull anything out of this apart from maybe these representing characters in the movie. Wendigo's main sentiment, in my opinion, was just a fascination about the sailor and sea imagery. And I know we briefly touched on this, but this is really something that I want to go into more with my theory, so I'll leave that for now. But he was definitely an inspiration into what to look at for what I tried to theorize about coming up too. So with that being said, let's look at the fan theories before we go into my theories and final predictions, as well as looking at the interviews. Let's do a rapid fire coverage of the most prominent fan theories that will be interesting to know before you watch the movie, and do let me know if I missed anything in the comments. The Universal Convergence and Consumption Protocol. In the cryptic messaging in the I Remember video that we discussed, there is information some drew to mean that the Backrooms are not a parallel dimension, but actually an expanding tumor that is slowly consuming the primary reality, slowly sucking in the soul and information to construct its crude representation of what we already had. Although also linking to sea and sailor imagery, the poetic narration describes fleeting shells sinking ever slowly, and manor overlooking the sea that was taken by the sea. Theorists interpret the sea as the expanding geometry of the complex swallowing the earth, filling it up, eventually drowning everything else out. This implies an apocalyptic endpoint where standard reality and the Backrooms converge entirely. There's no escape or beginning or end. There's no home to return to after this tipping point. Is this the end reality that Ivan Beck is trying to avoid, and something needs to happen within the complex for him to shut this down? Or is this an inevitable endpoint of what happens if he greedily keeps the threshold open? The imperfect memory engine. One of the most widely accepted overarching theories is that the complex is none other than a memory storage drive for the entirety of Earth, and that it's an imperfect one. The theory suggests that null zones are where the data of Earth is absorbed or transferred onto the drive. Following this analogy, the data that is being stored is distorted like a corrupted digital file or fading human memory. This accounts for why rooms fail to grasp the spatial logic that we have in the real world. A perfect example of this is the suburban neighborhood that's underground out of context in Pitfalls. There's just no concept of sky in that realm. Another example is that the rooms have different contexts being fragmented and being unfitting to their own neighbors. A homely living room could transform into an atrium that then leads onto a theatre that then leads onto an office. There's no context about where these places belong. This also explains a theory about the origin of still life, in that the complex cannot accurately generate life forms due to imperfect memory transfer. Even the most basic bacteria is slightly distorted. Project KV-31, Loma, Prieta, Seismic, Causality. We spoke about how the activation of the threshold on October 17, 1989 correlated with a devastating Loma Prieta earthquake in Northern California. Theorists suggest that the massive energy displacement required to tear the fabric of reality triggered the seismic anomaly. While Kane has implied it might be a coincidence, many believe that Kane makes no mistakes in this regard, and there must still be some significance that we haven't uncovered yet. Ivan Beck's 1972 solar storm amnesia theory. We know that the main leader of Async, or at least architect of the threshold, is Ivan Beck, who is widely considered by theorists to have profound memory loss, physical trauma, and amnesia, and that some believe that a massive solar flare in August of 1972, which does exist in reality and is documented, eerily fits the visuals in Overflow. People think this event blinded him in one eye and gave him amnesia, or at least partially erasing parts of his memory. A series of songs has a cover with a man in a suit with a covered face. Covering his face is a sun, specifically from the 1972 solar storm, with the solar storm location bearing a hole where his right eye may be.
I think I would be coming in here with like a missing eye if I had spent a penny of that on anything other than.
In the background there is text from the news reports of a fake vineyard wreck used to cover up Peter Tench's death. This is widely thought to be Ivan Beck, as this cover-up was of course led by Ivan, and also in the background we see the Threshold prototype machine. In other possible depictions of Ivan, he is also missing his right eye, or his eyes are obscured, as pointed out by a bunch of YouTube theorists. Music tracks repeatedly show even more symbolism of the sun, light frequencies dancing from blue to green to red, and imagery of what is most likely Ivan being tied to the significance of the sun. A recent upload titled Kind Old Sun exhibits an uplifting, heartfelt and warmingly courageous composition. The title is a poignant phrase from Wilfred Owen's World War I poem Futility. The poem, matching the touching, sentimental tone of the track, depicts a comrade trying to revive a dead soldier, hoping the sun's warmth can bring him back, as it does in nature, but to no avail. The phrase highlights the irony that the same sun that nurtures life on Earth is now powerless to stop the futility of death. Could this be to say that the sun is what allowed life on Earth to exist, yet is the driving factor in what is tearing our reality apart in creating the Backrooms complex? The project of creating the threshold and general project name for the complex is KV31, which stands for Karlovy Vary 1931, the birthplace and birth time of Ivan Beck. Though cosmic and unexplained, a large amount of people believe that Beck's tenacity and desire to create the threshold and conquer the Backrooms is an attempt to reclaim his lost history or physically render his forgotten memories. Localisation Anchor Theory. A very simple theory is that Async HQ is located in San Jose, California. People believe that many, most, or all of the items appearing in the Backrooms originate from the same geographic region, and that the complex isn't mapping Earth equally, instead being anchored to Santa Clara Valley. Even Captain Clark's in the movie trailer is located in San Jose, and the Chinese medical leaflet being from California also makes quite a lot of sense. I'm not sure about those Mao posters though. Kane Pixels Ontological Origin Theory. As we touched on, there are many branches of lore from the original Backrooms image. Games, series, and animations all spawned as different interpretations of the Backrooms. A meta theory appeared where some suggested that the Kane Pixels timeline is actually the chronological prequel to all or most of these. I guess this is because his series is the most famous series to cover how the Backrooms were created, a basis for other creators to have a start and reference point for. But some actually tried to make this theory the lore itself, stating that Async eventually, canonically, transforms into the Major Explorers Group, or MEG. Kane has said that his universe is just his and that canon doesn't hold much meaning for an almost shared IP like this, but it doesn't stop people from drawing architectural parallels such as the Pitfalls neighborhood becoming Wikidots level 9. I personally just think this is an inevitability of people sharing ideas with a restrictive and predetermined inspiration and basis. Enough people creating liminal space media based on a lot of similar famous images are bound to create some things that line up. The digital construct matrix hypothesis. You've definitely noticed a video game-like similarity to the Backrooms, like a game engine in real life, warped textured, flat imagery and jagged edges to objects. Of course, the series is predominantly shot and made in Blender, but many believe that the Backrooms is a digital simulation in itself, rendering in real life, bringing a simulation to the physical, or could even be a catastrophic glitch in our universe rendering engine, supporting the idea that our universe is a simulation itself, not an organic reality. That in itself is a theory that many people believe to be probable about our real world. At the end of our world's lifespan, as we know it, either the entire world ends or we find a way to simulate a new one. So what are the chances that we're already living in a simulation created by a previous society? A very interesting theory, even if not outwardly narratively connected. The Greenlightenment Theory. I had a very similar theory to green lightenment myself before discovering it, so I'll reserve this for later in the video where I expand on my own thoughts. But in essence, the green lightenment theory is what I touched on earlier in regards to the I Remember tape, where in alchemy, green, which is often depicted as a green lion or sulfuric acid, is known as a substance that is purifying and can break something down to rebuild it in a better form. Peter is leaking the found footage tapes. A theory cannot be more self-explanatory than this. Peter Tench, who some think has escaped and isn't dead, is trying to leak all the info that we see in this found footage tape series. Okay, I mean, I'm just theorizing now anyway, so let's go off into my actual theories about what I think will either happen in the film or about the series in general. I'm really excited for this bit, but let me know what you think about them and if you think they're stupid. Building off the theory we spoke about earlier regarding imagery of the green lion devouring the sun having ties to alchemy, specifically in the context of breaking something down into its most basic form to then rebuild it perfectly, I have a few more theories after some consideration. In essence, the message is that things must be broken down to be built stronger and better. The Backrooms could be parts of human environments being broken down over time. The forming of this new realm could be breaking down the universe to be rebuilt in whatever the creator, such as Ivan Beck or Laws of Nature, deem as perfect. And if Ivan Beck is both the protagonist and antagonist, like Kane says, it could be the case that this is a necessary evil, a necessary scary stage of producing something amazing. Maybe he sees it as a way for humanity to escape war, apocalypse, or a climate crisis. This metaphor also connects to the abundant imagery we have of the sea throughout the series, representing the conquering of the unknown, challenging yourself and pushing yourself beyond your limits. By this, I mean that this can definitely be seen as making yourself stronger by pushing yourself through hardship and rebuilding yourself stronger after hardship. You can probably see this echoed in your own life. Your greatest achievements have probably been formed by pushing yourself through the unknown and putting yourself in challenging positions, not letting negative what-ifs about your output cloud your vision and desire to reach your potential. Maybe Ivan Beck truly has no idea about what could happen, but he thinks it's a necessary thing to happen for Earth to come out on top, for humanity to prosper, even if this is wrong. The sentiment of this never-ending pursuit of expansion, improvement, and pushing limits is something that Kane seems to experience in relation to his own creative progression and work ethic.
Do you care about retaining the vision and the feel of the viral stuff?
Absolutely, absolutely. I do not want to hand over the car keys and let it turn into something else. I wouldn't be doing this if the idea was for it to mutate into something else, because no amount of money, I mean, maybe a few billion, but for the most part, money can't substitute the feeling of having a project you're invested in.
Yeah.
Because everything you do, no matter what, you're always gonna get desensitized to it in some way. So you have to, in order to be constantly engaged and constantly motivated to do new things, just put yourself in a situation where you're always moving up a hill rather than plateauing and sort of reaching downwards to where you've already been. As soon as I finish a project, I feel good for having it done for like one day, and then instantly I start to get hit with this like need to make something new and this unrest. I don't know if it's just a me thing. I physically need to be making stuff. I need to have this light at the end of the tunnel to be running after at all times.
I think that it's very possible that this sentiment has some kind of through line in the feature film. For example, in an ARG marketing, we see a fake advert for the furniture store, Captain Clark's Ottoman Empire, that our main character owns. Who am I to judge? Maybe he's a very passionate furniture salesman and he loves his business. Owning a business like this would be a great success for a ton of people, but this is relative to the individual's starting point and what they are pursuing. So the corny, cheesy feel of this advert could also be seen as a bit of a humiliating ordeal in an attempt to gain customers, something that's often pointed to in media as being dehumanizing. Other YouTubers and theorists have also suggested that they think his business is failing. And of course, Clark's character is struggling with some form of mental health issue, as a therapist plays a key part in the trailer. Something about dressing up and changing yourself when you need to get by is something a lot of us face. This could be drawing out a further irony of the sea imagery intersecting in this very context, as he dresses up as a pirate with marine voyager themes, and even saying,
"And the only thing you'll be wanting is more space."
The main factor here being that it is possible that the main character feels his store is failing, or that he isn't reaching his potential or working on his passions, and his approach to tackle the mystery of the Backrooms and conquer that unknown could be a thematic parallel to the mental testing needed, the breakdown and restoration of his character and ego that is needed to overcome his struggles in the world and reach his potential. And to put the icing with the cake on this, after I'd recorded and edited this segment, a new interview came out that says this.
Clark,
wanted to be an architect, and in a lot of ways I'm sure he's got the formal training, but clearly he is not, and you can see some of the stuff he's been working on, and you maybe can understand why things didn't work out fully in some ways, but nevertheless he's holding on to this idea that it is still a very real thing that was kind of taken from him and is still on the table in some way. I think that part, especially with the architecture, is essential to sort of seeing the initial side of why he might be sort of enamored by this place and what it might be sort of activating for him.
Clark has the background of an architect, so furniture is not the career he wanted to be in, and you know, maybe it's not what he thinks his magnum opus should be. He's not living up to his potential, or he is sad with where he is, and I'm just excited where these really cool themes will be going and what conclusions are pulled. And with the exact psychological theories that they might cover, we'll go into that a little bit later. And while we're at it, another thing I really liked is that he also compared Clark to the main character in 1 Hour Photo.
It's a story that focuses on an individual who's sort of fallen into an isolated place in life where he's got his profession and he's got the deal he's made with the modern world and the world we live in, and how he uses some very specific technical functions of this modern world to give him a profound feeling of purpose and engagement with his life and in a sense of self.
This is a super underrated film, and alongside Utopia and It Ends, you just have to watch this movie. I'm happy Kane mentioned it because it's one of my favorite movies, and a lot of the themes that are in this video describing what might be in the movie are very prominent in that. Very weird film, and a very unique one, but yeah, if Clark's character is supposedly similar to the main character in 1 Hour Photo, Clark is going to be unhinged, guys. I don't know. The guy in 1 Hour Photo is terrifying, so anyway, I'll leave it to you guys to watch if you want to. Okay, I'm actually incredibly annoyed but satisfied at the same time. As I was about to edit the last part, another video dropped on the 26th of May 2026. 2 hours ago for me. The video has less than 1,000 views right now. Kane Parsons breaking down the scene from the Backrooms, and it pretty much just confirms my theories about his character resenting that he didn't do better, and I'm blaming external events for why his life didn't go the way he wanted to. And obviously we get loads of visuals about this character and this arc, so man, if only I posted this video a bit earlier, I would look like a genius. But anyway, at face value, being tested mentally, breaking down as an individual to be rebuilt stronger, is a theme also echoed in the Yellow Wallpaper novel we spoke of earlier, where the woman protagonist completely loses her mind while being trapped in isolation. But by freeing the non-existent woman she thinks is in the walls, she frees herself and ends up happier for it afterwards. Or at least that's from her mentally unstable perspective. The story considers her freedom a triumph, being released from the shackles of her oppressive husband, only achieved through a complete mental breakdown. In this instance, it's ambiguous as to whether or not she's truly liberated or just freed from her husband at the cost of her permanently altered, poorer mental state. After all, Rabi's demise was a slow and painful one. The only catharsis was one of acceptance of his fate, with no perfect reassembly of his stronger self. Maybe this is to say that the reality is that in these difficult testing moments as humans, yes, we can come out on top, stronger than ever with lessons learned and tenacity gained, but pushed too hard, it can still destroy us, to the point there's none of us left at all. Is this why Kane says that Async and Ivan Beck are both protagonists and antagonists? Because they're providing this situation that has the intentions of purity, progress, or recalling what is lost, but also causing many others to be broken down completely, even beyond their will, forcing people into a ship to explore the sea, without them ever volunteering a courageous or sacrificial spirit. They did not consent to this journey. And although the mindset of conquering the unknown is to always assume hope and something on the other side, what if it doesn't exist? What if the Backrooms are truly infinite, an overlapping of the pivot that never ends and cannot be conquered? How long can you venture into an endless abyss before you give up? Is it futile? Everyone has a breaking point, and even if there are those who would truly continue forever, spending lifetimes or generations traveling forwards, what would this cost others, and what would it cost themselves if they are traveling for eternity? There's a movie called It Ends about this very phenomenon, about being stuck on a cosmic road that has no end, only driving forever or giving up, and not knowing if there really was an end. It's a perfectly fitting example for this thought, a perfect example of a liminal experience and a haunting concept. How many months of driving without stopping before you can no longer convince your best friend to stay in the car with you? How many years before any emotion you feel becomes a faded version of what you have once felt? and how many decades or centuries until there are no more original thoughts to have, no more feelings to experience at all? At what point does the voyage into the unknown become a Sisyphean nightmare, one that is inevitable torture rather than finding the enjoyment in the necessary daily plights? But is this worth risking for the possibility of enlightenment and bliss? In I Remember, we also hear a line, "There is nothing greater than seeing the green light."
I was so impressed how his brain is so special, how it can at once hold all the deep mythology, quantum physics, of what the Backrooms is, and at the same time he's a humanist and he's very interested in story and performance.
Well, I did go down the rabbit hole of liminal spaces and quantum physics at the time, like 6 months before I knew about this project.
What could the quantum physics theories be? You might have heard generally of wave function collapse, where observation of an environment can change its state or reality. Before being observed, quantum systems remain in a state of superposition, which is a linear combination of all possible outcomes of an observation or action. Once the environment is observed or interacted with, there are two theories. The Copenhagen interpretation, the original traditional view, is that when an environment is observed or interacted with, all other possibilities vanish, and another is that all outcomes exist in different timelines, however, can no longer interact with one another. In the Backrooms, this could manifest as unexplored rooms only becoming real once entered by a wanderer or lab worker. This is potentially why we see a green light when people explore far enough, entering new rooms, or why we see objects and furniture that are familiar to wanderers or mirroring surface realities, as these rooms are generated by people as they enter them based on their own time period and experiences. That could be why the environment feels dreamlike, as you've probably noticed that in dreams your mind is seemingly generating as it goes on. Your house, bedroom, or workplace feels different, and your mind creates rooms and items that don't exist or feel off. These warped rooms and objects could have a darker side though. What if they're manifesting as flat or distorted because the wanderers that generated the rooms did so at a point where they were so starved, isolated, and fatigued that their minds could only muster the mental capacity to generate half-accurate representations of the places in their minds, compared to the classic backrooms we see that are accurate down to the material buildup of tiles and electrical circuits. This is a cool idea, but it doesn't totally explain how some places appear to be linked to the surface mirroring the exact location it's tied to, such as the father in the wall from Found Footage 3. Some have suggested that this is similar to quantum entanglement, where objects remain connected to normal reality. For example, we can hear radio waves from different periods on the surface playing too. It could be possible that the creation of the Backrooms caused this quantum decoherence and the stretching of physical space as we discussed. But how we observe and interact as humans could be similar to wave function collapse, where our perception generated the Backrooms as we explore it. One theory I have about null zones and the expansion of space is that this stretching of physical space to create new room could be increasing the distance between the contents of atoms. You might have already heard the silly fact that as atoms are technically mostly empty space, there's an incredibly small, improbable chance that when you touch something, all the atoms align perfectly so that the contents of the atoms can pass one another and you could perfectly pass through a physical object. If space being increased is possible with the low proximity distortion system, could null zones be areas where particles in atoms are being stretched further apart from one another, either for extended periods or momentarily, allowing gaps to fall into the other realm of the complex? The stretching of these particles could explain why wallpaper textures become stretched as the complex continues to expand. But what else could be causing the constant changes? This space between atoms theory is just a loose layman explanation for how no clipping could occur that I had, but is there a quantum mechanics concept that aligns with it as well? Well, there is a pre-existing concept called quantum tunneling. This is where particles can appear on another side of a barrier that they usually shouldn't be allowed to surpass. Could this be what's happening to entire people or cars on a larger scale, if they're crossing a barrier into another branch of an alternate universe, where the Backrooms is a malformed universe branch? And are these tunnels being opened more frequently and wider with the universe's fabric expanding? One of my most recent thoughts around liminal spaces that I personally haven't seen people discussing is one regarding what exactly it is that makes the Backroom scary. Not just that it's nostalgic, familiar, but with some off-putting changes, but why exactly those changes are the way that they are. And one of these recent thoughts appears to be something that aligns fairly well with what Kane Parsons' intentions around psychological themes might be. Kane has said himself that he doesn't personally find the Backroom scary, and that in general he isn't scared of most things, aside from the fact that he has always and continues to be largely fixated on existentialism and what happens after death. And with so many nods to memory, my theory on an element that I see overlooked a lot on where the fear of the Backrooms comes from is the loss of memory rather than a shared collective familiarity. One of the scariest and most traumatic ways to leave behind your cognition, perception, and memory during death is dementia and Alzheimer's disease, where you become less and less connected with the world and people around you. People often refer to dementia patients as becoming childlike again, asking where their parents are, almost regressing to a time in their head where they're a child, where these base core memories are formed, things we see predominantly in these liminal space images. The world around them is fading, aside from the most familiar visuals and aspects of life. The rest is blurry, distorted, and vague. The horrors of losing your sense of self, memory, and those around you is isolating and suffocating. And I'm sure how the visuals and feeling of the Backrooms link to this doesn't need to be explained. They feel off and off-putting because the mind is forgetting their true purpose. Perhaps it's the world drawn back to its most basic memories, forms, and elements in the reverse way, leaving behind only what is remembered as the brain dies. But how does this link to the Kane Pixels universe other than there being a vague existential crossover? Well, aside from Ivan Beck's memory problems, we know there's a large significance placed on the sun, especially in regards to the sun and death in the Kind Old Sun poem we covered. Kane himself has said that this existentialism comes from the fear of death itself. Not about dying, but the idea of not having perception anymore and not being conscious of your own cognition.
Got a big fear of death and not like a tangible thing, not like I'm afraid a bus is gonna hit me when I go outside, but just more of like these things like not existing forever and not having awareness of
You're scared of the unknown.
Well, yeah, it's the unknown aspect,
Interesting.
but yeah, like, you know, that's just an example of like, they dictate my life in the sense that they produce such great emotion that I want to try to just explore those feelings in a more literal way.
Yeah.
It consumes all my time. I think about these things for hours and hours and hours a day. It really is my whole world, between research, the technical process of making these things, and then just brainstorming and thinking, like spend hours just thinking, pacing and thinking. Yeah, I really don't have many complaints. I think I like being part of the machine.
In the vein of imagery of sunset or sunrise, it's assumed that it's sunset, but let's cover both possibilities. In regards to dementia, sunset is a very particular period, heavily documented as the sundown period, the peak times being between 4:30 and 11 p.m, with symptoms of sundowning in dementia patients being the most prominent during dusk or when light conditions change. A very real, noticeable shift in symptoms and behavior is seen as normal by care workers during these times. The episodes can be brief or last for several hours into the night, triggered by a transition from light to dark, fatigue from the day, and disruptions to the internal body clock, being worse in autumn and winter when there's less daylight. But what is it that the elderly is experiencing in this time? The more tame days might include feeling disoriented about time and place, like not knowing where you are or thinking you're somewhere else at a different time of day. You might get restless and just begin pacing around, wandering the halls, or maybe just feel like you have to rock in a rocking chair. But this confusion on what your reality is, who you are, how old you are, and who is in your unknown environment can manifest in truly upsetting and disturbing ways. You might get angry, start shouting or arguing with paranoid thoughts that strangers, even if they're your carers or family members, are trying to do you harm, as you're not aware of your own mental state. There will be a high chance that you would hallucinate people around you, like loved ones who have passed away, hearing voices talking, or what's described as phantom ringing sounds, or even thinking that you're in a completely different location, becoming prone to seeing things that aren't there in the shadows and low light. Things that are actively avoided in care homes by turning on lights before it becomes dusk. People who experience sundowning often completely lose their sense of place, time, and reality. Not to oversimplify or trivialize this, I've experienced how tragic this can be, but the intense state of confusion and only recognizing the most simple elements of surroundings, without wider context of the actual environment, must be extremely similar to the familiar yet haunting feeling of uncanny similarity paired with emptiness in liminal spaces. In fact, I do remember covering one liminal space image in my liminal spaces video about this care home that was meant to simulate the outside but just felt completely wrong. And you of course know about the famous album that is meant to feel like dementia as you listen to it, as the songs degrade over time. If you've dealt with dissociation and memory issues yourself, you'll know how scary it can be to have to fight for a feeling of lucidity, presence, and mindfulness with the fear of losing yourself. And I think there's a decent chance that this existential fear of no longer being and forgetting, losing a sense of self, is what Kane may be carrying thematically in the upcoming film. The feeling of not knowing what room you are in for a couple of seconds when you wake up is a peculiar and uneasy, almost cosmic feeling that a lot of us have experienced, but living like that for a decent chunk of time every day or even all the time is truly horrifying, and I have the utmost empathy for anyone experiencing these things. I also wonder how far this goes. Did you ever see those images as a kid where everything looked familiar, but if you tried to focus on one object, nothing actually made sense and you couldn't distinguish any objects? If that is a possibility in memory loss, that's probably the most terrifying thing I've ever heard. It's that kind of raw fear and dread that I think is perfectly synonymous with the angst and existential feelings in the Backrooms. The fear of what is unknown and what you're unsure of when you lose yourself at the end of life. I won't do rundowns of all the trailers, you should watch them yourself, but I'll put everything here that you might have missed. There's loads of little Easter eggs in them, but these are the key points I think are important to remember for when you watch the movie. Captain Clark Furniture Store is just straight up a nod to the origin of the original Backrooms image being an old furniture store from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, even down to the font that the shop uses. We get a lot more sea imagery, even on the fax papers that we used in the ARG teasers, where fans could enter a fax number to get this little Easter egg teaser of the film. Further information was also added to the ARG with the fax machine and the fake advert, essentially an online bulletin board. One of them, with a subject line "Gulling Crazy," talks about how trash keeps appearing on a bay. Not only is this more generic nods to the sea, it does show that the seagulls specifically might have symbolism themselves. Maybe it's because seagulls are recognized as being a symbol for being close to land, as they're only near the shore, and potentially this has a parallel in the Backrooms. The trash appearing means that null zones could work the other way as well, where trash that has collected in the Backrooms may be leaking out back onto the surface. And by the date of this bulletin, it's likely only a few days after the March Archive 1990 VHS tape, as the YouTube theorist Red pointed out. Another message states, "Who do you want to become? Find out at Santa Clara University." To me, this reads as Clark not becoming who he once wanted to, maybe toying with the idea that some people see university as a safe way to reach their dreams, almost a guarantee into their chosen profession. Yet this is very frequently not the case. This doesn't have to be tied to Clark. We also see psychology mentioned, but it doesn't need to be any specific character. It could just be the general themes of pursuit in life and ambition. In fact, another date on this message links to the gallery image from the Backrooms noted with the same date. This makes me think that the origin of this image is one from the university as a memory, manifested in the Backrooms, documented by Async or Clark. Could it be that Clark attended this university in his youth and, when exploring the Backrooms, caused this room to be generated from his subconscious, similar to wave function collapse theories? And always, it could be the case that Ivan Beck went to this university and this is a picture from the actual university and not the Backrooms. The theorist Red also speculates that these majors are ones that Ivan Beck may have studied when he was in formal education himself, as they all tie in to what was needed for his career. Another note documents that a local author and psychologist, Dr. Mary Klein, will be reading from her new book, The Window Within, and the moment you believe change is possible, you've already begun. Not only does this likely put a name to the psychologist we see in the trailer, especially as she is seeing window imagery on her television, and apparently this screenshot existed, which I completely missed in one of the trailers, but these quotes fit exceedingly well with the green enlightenment and sea theories insofar that they're likely to be attempting to motivate people on to pursue challenging their own inner thoughts and blocks from working on their passions and breaking down mental roadblocks that restrict them from working on those passions. Another entry documents stop signs repeatedly being stolen, essentially documenting a null zone that keeps reappearing under stop sign locations. The stop sign is a visual we do see repeated throughout the series. The door number 247 could also be prominent in the movie, maybe tied to a character, but I don't know, there's lots of loose things that probably tie into something but are seemingly random right now. So here are all the pictures of these ARG images that you can analyze yourself if you want to. To be honest, personally, I've just ran out of time. I've been working on this video for way too long and new things keep popping up. Though what I will say is that another post also references Reversion, which is a tie to Kane's other series, The Oldest View. I do doubt this is a crossover moment though, and likely just a little Easter egg for the fans. We also see what some people might consider still life being trapped within the walls. Again, a lot of people think that these are people with no clips and then got stuck, or did the complex change shape around these people too quickly and trap them, or did it grow around them like a tree does when you leave a bike against it? We also see cameras being explicitly visible, meaning Clark, a wanderer, will likely interact with Async with what is entirely possible to be the first time a natural wanderer who's fallen through a null zone will come into contact with a laboratory. In the new 1-minute teaser trailer, he also comes across an Async ID card, so this is, I mean, we could have seen this coming, but it seems pretty much confirmed at this point. We also see for the first time a null zone, other than the threshold, if it could be considered as a null zone, that people could pass back and forth through, though this is obviously something that isn't completely constant. We also see the same picture of a tropical beach in the background of the trailer, and we see this picture from Captain Clark's furniture store being duplicated within the Backrooms, which backs up that anchor theory we spoke about earlier. We of course see the caveman that was in Found Footage 3, so we're likely to see a lot of the locations we have done in the series. And we also get a glimpse of what is likely to be the original life form we see in Found Footage 1. There's also an incredible line that says,
all these places and buildings, rooms, misremembering themselves. It's a real mess. But also beautiful, in a way. It just goes on and on and on. All these rooms. This place builds them. Actually, more like it remembers them. And the more times it remembers something, the less it does.
This is what I'm most excited to touch on. Not only does it infer that Clark believes that the Backrooms has some kind of sentience of his own, but fits well into the theory that the Backrooms is generated from memory. It pushes this as a theory because in reality, when you recall a memory, you aren't actually recalling the event that happened. You're recalling the last time you thought of that memory itself. This is how memories get hazier over time, as we're only recalling details that we thought about last time for the most part, and certain details can appear stronger or clearer as background details fade. This is also how false memories can change and be generated, as if you misremember something once, you're very likely to recall that incorrect memory instead of the original one the next time you try and remember what happened. This could explain how rooms warp and change over time and are in different locations, and how some architecture doesn't make sense. Think about how repetitive the original Backrooms is. If you remember this, you're going to remember it differently to how it was in reality, and each time you remember it, you'll get something wrong, but that will manifest as the truth the next time you enter. False memories is a common theme with compulsive thinking and guilt, as people can become so scared of wrongdoings or things brought upon them that they accidentally change or alter their memories and can no longer trust their perspective of events. Something truly haunting. This is why witness testimonies are so hard to be reliable, because people can warp the facts and have misunderstandings of what they actually saw that get perpetuated, even though things happened right before their very eyes. And often why you need more eyewitness testimonies than you might expect to find someone actually guilty in court. This acknowledgement of deteriorating memory in the trailer also ties into theories of Ivan Beck's potential amnesia or memory loss, and how this may tie into the creation of physical space. So much of the standardized Backrooms footage matching Captain Clark's, and the fact that Clark can move back and forth through the null zones many times, makes me think that it's one of the main puncture points. Or was this because Clark was the first person to enter, potentially even before Async? In any case, null zones could draw information from their real-world location, seen in Found Footage 3, with the man in the wall and the drum kit. We see Ravi being very much into music, and those are the main things he sees and experiences in the complex. Just a little Easter egg in the trailer is that the voices we hear when Clark turns this hallway with a caveman cardboard cutout is actually from the space probe Voyager, a real space probe sent up in the 1970s, sending the message, "Hello, we are the children of Earth," in as many languages as possible, hoping to hear back from any extraterrestrial life forms. Is this included simply because there happens to be a null zone where this audio is being played? Or did Async also send out this echoing through the Backrooms to try and communicate with life? In the trailer, we can see a room full of squares, which many people believe to be the Pitfalls room 14D on a map, which means the entry point that Clark goes through can't be far from the threshold of Async. Going back to the fax machine paper, a YouTuber Red pointed out that this is the same date Peter Tench drew a sketch on while he was being detained by Async. Could it be that Peter somehow interacted with Captain Clark in some way, or Clark himself, and it's part of what drove him to insanity, as he was thinking that there's a twisted parallel universe in there, despite that just being another gate to his own original reality? Now that we've cast a wide net of potential overarching theories about the Backroom universe in general, let's comb through the interviews for any tidbits about the universe or what might happen in the movie. We also get a very subtle partial explanation of how the human psyche is tied either to the perceptions of the Backrooms or how they're created. For example, in this clip about food or toilets.
Yeah, there's probably food. It would probably be really hard to find.
Yeah.
And it might be rotted.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah, I'm sure there's food.
Okay.
How do you define food? Like food for who?
For me.
For you?
For me.
Okay, but like what do you consider, like what's your spectrum of food?
Probably broader than most people. Like some potato chips or something.
Okay,
Maybe a can of soup.
So like on the scale between soup and table, like how close to table are you able to get?
I've never thought about that.
Okay, well, if you had to pick a number between 1 and 10.
Probably like a 3.
Okay, well, yeah, well then you might be able to find food, but it's probably not. You'd probably die.
Okay. Good
Water would be easier. Water would be easier.
Water would be easier.
Yeah, water would be easier.
Whether or not food is in the Backrooms is determined by how much someone considers food a distinct object, like a table in their mind, or as its own category, or even possibly how much it's alive. Does this mean that only inanimate objects, static things, can be spawned by the Backrooms? Is it only what humans deem as inorganic themselves that is transferred from their minds into the complex? Things like technology, manufactured homes, and artificial comfort. This same distinction on what an individual considers an animal arises again, this time with the example of organic lifeforms specifically. In this example, he arrives at the idea that a living dog could be in the Backrooms, however, in a very particular set of circumstances.
Animals?
What do you call an animal? What's that? What do you consider an animal?
These responses scare me more than the Backrooms. This adds such a layer to it.
What's the difference between a table and a dog?
A dog, okay. Wow, never thought about that. A dog is a living organism that has aspects that are moving within it, and
where did this come?
Cells came from a tree but it's dead. It's a dead tree.
Okay, is the dog alive?
Yes, the dog is
For
alive.
how long? When? Like what years?
Let's imagine a dog that was alive, that's currently alive.
On the table.
Standing on the table.
Okay, cool. What type of dog?
Let's make it a pug.
Okay, cool.
It's alive and it's walking around on top of the table.
Yeah, it could be there. Pug on a table.
Well, it's alive, so it could hop off the table.
Yeah.
Could run around.
Well, it wouldn't live forever.
Well, no, but it's a...
But how did they get in there?
Did it no clip into there?
Well, yeah. Well, then it would run around and probably eventually stop running around.
The interviewer had to be able to imagine the dog himself in his mind and also have it be on top of the table between them, a static object. Does this mean that the capacity of what the Backrooms is able to mimic or create is tied to a nearby individual's capacity of imagination in their visual spatial sketchpad or inner eye? Basically, how vivid their imaginations can be. Is that why Ravi was fine to imagine music and objects that were familiar to him, but maybe his inner eye isn't great at imagining people or moving objects, and that's why still life couldn't walk properly and chased him in a distorted way. It wasn't until Kane asked the interviewer if he could picture the dog moving around on the table that he claimed the dog could be living in the Backrooms. He also asked when the dog was alive, meaning perhaps before a certain time, such as before the threshold was fully opened, or before null zones existed, there was no chance of life existing. Does this mean that there was a time before even the bacteria was there? In a recent teaser trailer, we see a bird that is seemingly dead being reanimated suddenly. Is it only being reanimated because it's being observed? In an interview with James Wan, one of the creators of Saw, who similarly had a very early career start in film, creating Saw at around 25 years old after meeting his friend Lee Winnell, his filmmaking partner in film school, at an even younger age, where they began cooking up what would become the Saw script, we get some insight into how the rooms change in the movie.
So when I'm making the Backrooms web series, I'm designing it as such, and when you know, a object or like a light switch or a pillar or something moves over a few feet to the right, it's not because, oh, we had to move it there because of like some logistical thing, or like we had to rebuild the set and there was a pillar there, so we had to account for like a slight shift. It's like, no, it has to be because of the narrative reason, because the building shifted in some way, and that means something that will get addressed later on. So people can kind of catch things like that.
Right.
So I made it's not a mistake, I love it to death, but it's like, I made the deliberate decision to let audiences know that those little things aren't random, and that
they can expect
That's really
anything
cool.
they catch. Like,
Right.
it puts them on guard that like there could be a lot of things they don't know are important until later.
All changes in the rooms in the movie that you might think look different are completely intentional and vital to the plot, including deviations from the original series and the images. These aren't just arbitrary changes or due to real-life production limits, but entirely relevant to the plot. This pretty much confirms that rooms can shift in size and shape over time, which we already knew, but potentially the walls can move in real time too, like we might have teased in this trailer. He also teases his perfect outcome being a 9-episode limited series following the movie.
The ideal scenario, creatively, would be to finish it off with like a 9-episode limited series.
Apparently, there is one fan theory that is completely correct.
There's been a few comments with very few likes and stuff that have gotten it more than anyone else.
Interesting.
Yet. Oh, actually, one person did.
One person did.
And it got 2 likes.
A24, they are very generous with the amount of creative control they want to give me on this project. Obviously, there would be points where the producers and studio would give notes, but we both want the same thing with this project. We're both going for the same endpoint.
Yeah.
As 24 is generous with creative control, we can assume it can stick to Kane Parsons' original intentions with the story. This is something he seems pretty happy about, being able to stay true to the original feel of the Backrooms imagery and subculture. He mentions it becomes personal and conceptual.
The story I'm telling is sort of branches outside of the area of eerie, weird atmosphere, strange room geometry, and it becomes a lot more personal and conceptual in a lot of ways.
I take this as supporting the argument for themes of mankind's exploration of the unknown, such as the sea and sun imagery, as well as Ivan Beck's personal story in that regard. One main point I hear echoed is that Async is not evil. Ivan Beck is the antagonist, but also the protagonist of the main Backroom story. I hold the stance that Ivan Beck is doing what he thinks will lead to the best outcome, despite a gritty path here, and that he's potentially misled by his condition or trauma. Though predictably, most interviews don't contain a ton of information about the plot or theories of the film, lots of creative process insight is given that can be pricelessly inspiring to take note of for those who want to create themselves. I really recommend listening if you do have time. I think it's interesting to note how much Kane and about how existentialism is often on his mind, because he also says this in one of his interviews.
And do you remember the first day at work? Like the first day you got on set and you were like, damn, this is happening for real?
The very first day. Yeah, I mean, I remember every day.
Which makes it seem like maybe his fear lies in that he simply can't understand not having a great memory. I don't know, I just thought that was interesting to include. So finally, let's wrap up with some movie predictions. To be honest, most of these theories I think are entirely possible or plausible to potentially have fragments of them being in the movie, but let's get into some specifics which I'll predict for fun. The movie will almost definitely take place in 1990, both in the real world and in the Backrooms. A character, Clark, works at his furniture store which is struggling financially, while his mental health is also being tested. He finds a doorway, a null zone, into the Backrooms that can open and close. He ventures deeper and deeper with his colleague or friend to document and explore it, both getting trapped inside when the null zone shuts, going missing for what is probably at least a couple of weeks on the surface, as his therapist, who most people see at most a couple times a week, notices that he is not coming up to sessions and goes looking for him. Async, the creators of the Backrooms, monitor and find Clark, almost definitely interacting with him in person. And I believe it's fairly likely that there's some crossover with these new characters with Prieta Tench. We should get some kind of partial resolution to the sea and sailor imagery, considering how prominent it is and how this should be digestible for first-time viewers as well. Similarly, this should be the same for Ivan Beck's story, but only enough to get us excited for future series episodes. We'll get some existential themes of breaking yourself down and pushing through the unknown to make yourself stronger, and how this can fail in some instances. It's vague, but these are themes that I think Kane will want to explore and give his insight on as a thematic message, and that's probably what I'm most excited for. We will likely and hopefully find out a little more on whether the geocentrism theory is true and how the sun influences the expansion of space and creation of the Backrooms. And we know that quantum physics will likely be explored more explicitly, likely one of the theories we covered earlier, especially wave function collapse, where potential rooms and objects are only generated or appear when we look or interact with them, or how quantum tunneling and space between atoms could be tied to no clipping into the Backrooms themselves. Mark Duplass, a confirmed cast member, is something I'm most excited for in the movie too, as I love his previous work. He's incredible at playing mentally disturbed characters and ones with multiple faces and layers. In this regard, I think it's likely he'll be playing an async worker, potentially even Peter Tench, after he's lost his mind, or any other Backrooms wanderer the clerk or the therapist could find that may slowly be losing his mind. He could also be the dad in the wall from Found Footage 3. But it's a bit far-fetched, and I'd only believe that if the theory that that person does become the still life we see, as that would be a deranged character for Mark Duplass to play. Or even, is there a chance that he could be playing Ivan Beck? Finally, in regards to Ivan Beck, the sun and amnesia, I do believe we'll get some more insight into enlightenment through this green energy and its ties to the sun, as well as exploring themes of existential degradation when it comes to memory and losing parts of yourself, as we discussed in the sundowning segment. In Encounters with the Lifeforms 2, we'll probably learn a little bit more about how to counter them and their weaknesses. Perhaps we'll find out the answer to the don't move instructions we've seen written on the wall, and if they really do deter lifeforms from chasing you if you follow those rules. Mary Klein is likely somewhat a preacher of some kind of Jungian psychological theory involving looking inwards and dismantling the ego and dark parts of yourself to heal and not suppressing them. I'm definitely forgetting some stuff I've even said in this video, but I'll just stick to those as my main predictions. The lead up to the Backrooms movie has changed so much about what we know about the Backrooms and pointed us in some incredible direction. I love reading about what inspires writers and directors and what motivates them, so let me know if you'd like a deeper look at all the books, poems, movies, series, psychology and philosophy, Kane references in the series and movie as a separate video. I really felt like I bit off more than I could chew with this video, but it's been really fun to work on and I hope it's coherent enough for you guys to enjoy. And I'm beyond excited and motivated and inspired to see the upcoming movie. I'm gonna have a bunch more videos exploring the movie after it's come out, so be sure to subscribe if you want more of this content. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to stick around. Most of my videos in the past 2 years have been about people creating and being inspired and their creative process to do with horror. You'll find something you can enjoy in there, and going forward, who knows what will happen. So yeah, thanks so much for sticking around. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon. Let me know what you think of the movie. This is going to be a great week.